Welcome to the Hindu editorial analysis on 5th May 2022. The first editorial I am going to discuss today is In the Time of War. The editorial is set in the context of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3-day, 3-nation visit to Europe. In Germany, PM met the Chancellor Olaf Scholz. He took part in the 6th India-Germany Intergovernmental Consultations. IGC for short, the consultations are held every 2 years since 2011. The agreements signed were on green and sustainable development, triangular development cooperation in third countries, establishment of an encrypted secure connection between Ministry of External Affairs and German Foreign Office, renewable energy partnership, comprehensive migration and mobility partnership, advanced training of corporate executives, green hydrogen task force, agroecology and forest landscape restoration. Germany announced Euro 10 billion for bilateral cooperation between India and Germany. In Denmark, PM Narendra Modi met Danish PM Mette Frederiksen and discussed the green strategic partnership with Denmark. PM also attended the India Nordic Summit. Nordic countries are Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. The first India Nordic Summit was held in 2018. In France, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. The two leaders had talks on bilateral issues. India has civil nuclear cooperation, economic cooperation, and cultural cooperation with France. In 1998, India entered into a strategic partnership with France. Modi's visit comes at a time when European Union is angry at Russia and imposed sanctions on Russia. Sanctions are penalties imposed on a country for breaking international law. The sanctions include stopping imports of Russian oil, denying SWIFT transfer money facility to Russian banks, denying broadcasting rights to Russia's broadcasters. European Union is disappointed that India is silent on Ukraine war. It is a great fact that Russia is the strategic partner of India. India has to balance between its ties with European Union while maintaining its strategic partnership with Russia in this time of crisis of war. The second article to be discussed is Inevitable Increase. The article discusses on the RBI's increase in repo rates and cash reserve ratio by zero point 0.4 basis points and 0.5 basis points respectively. This is done by Monetary Policy Committee to rein in consumers' price inflation, which is hovering around 7%. The 6% is the upper limit for CPI inflation, which has been breached for 3 months continuously now. The International Monetary Fund has projected 5.7% inflation in developed nations and an increase of 2.8% in developing nations. International Monetary Fund is an international organization based in Washington DC and has 190 member countries. The goals of IMF are to reduce poverty, encouraging international trade, promoting financial stability and economic growth. The Monetary Policy Committee, headed by RBI Governor, is responsible for setting policy interest rates such as repo, reverse repo, and cash reserve ratio. The tolerance threshold limit of CPI inflation is the rate between 2.2% and 6% of CPI. The raising of repo rates will increase the lending rates of banks and deposit rates. When lending rates increase, businesses will stop availing further loans. When deposit rates increase, it will absorb excess liquidity from the economy. Inflation is the general increase in prices of goods and services in an economy. Inflation erodes the purchasing power of consumers since the money now buys fewer goods and services as prices have increased. The US Central Bank will raise interest rates in a few days from now. That will prompt fleet of capital from India into US markets. This is a threat which prompted the present increase in rates by RBI. The raising of interest rates by US Federal Reserve is known as policy normalization. The forex reserves of India might come down and it will put pressure on exchange rates. This is known as imported inflation. The risk of coronavirus is still lurking as Chinese experience has proven. The central government must understand that reining in inflation through RBI monetary policy intermediation is not enough. The rise in fuel prices trigger a host of price increase in related commodities. Hence, it is a prudent practice to revisit the fuel taxes now. The third article to be discussed is Economic Speed Bumps Yes, but No Breakdown. The article is set in the context of Nepal's economic challenges and crisis. Nepal is in deep economic crisis now. The surging trade deficit is threatening. It is already $18 billion now. Trade deficit is the excess of imports over exports. The country is also facing a balance of payment deficit. Balance of payments is an account tracking international transactions. When a country exports a commodity, the balance of payment gets credited. When the country imports a commodity, balance of payment gets debited. Nepal's inflation is also at a very high figure of 7.1%. The debt crisis is mounting and is 40% of GDP now. That is, out of 1 rupee of goods and services produced in India, in Nepal, 40 paise has to be repaid to lenders. The country's forex reserves have also fallen by 16.3% in just 9 months. There are two chief reasons for this crisis. Nepal is paralyzed as to policy interventions and a sudden decision to ban imports of luxury goods and moving towards self-sufficiency. The import ban is a wrong move as there are no substitutes for such goods. Nepal has done another mistake in curbing the autonomy of Nepal Rashtra Bank, which is the central bank of Nepal. The article points out that India had also a severe balance of payment crisis in 1991. The economic reforms brought in then beyond political considerations in India steered India through the crisis. Nepal has to open up to the world for investments. The country has to leave political considerations and work towards reviving the economy. The encouraging trend now can be seen that the geopolitical changes are happening in Nepal. It has understood its mistake in pursuing a Look China policy and has now acknowledged that West policy is feasible. China is not a friend in need. Nepal has now accepted $500 Millennium Challenge Corporation from US. It is a good sign. Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Dubey's recent visit to India on economic cooperation with India is another good sign. This is known as course correction by Nepal. The thinking is in the right direction. The fourth article to be discussed is Inflation Control Needs Another Model. The article is set in the context of rising CPI inflation and introspection as to how far RBI policy is going to reduce inflationary pressure. RBI's Monetary Policy Committee's decision to raise interest rates is known as inflation targeting. The writer analyzes how inflation happens. He says, inflation is the excess of output over its natural level. When RBI resorts to inflation targeting, the lending rates increase and manufacturers will not invest further and the output declines. The inflation targeting aims at controlling the money supply alone. The reduction in non-agricultural output when firms stop investing cannot control inflation. The chief reason of inflation is increase in the prices of agricultural goods. However, nothing much is done in increasing the supply of agricultural output. If agricultural output could be increased, the economy expands without inflation. When agricultural output increases, the food prices will decline and the demand for non-agricultural output increases. Thus, the economy will go forward. While increasing agricultural output, the product mix has to be checked here. The product mix implies the proportion of each product in the total production. The northern states are always thinking only of wheat production, and the southern states are always thinking of rice production. They collectively ignore that foods rich in minerals such as fruits and vegetables and food rich in proteins such as milk and meat has also been produced. The supply of such food items is very much lower than the demand for them. Hence, we need to look beyond rice and wheat. The reorientation of farming policy holds the key to reining in of actual inflation in India. The fifth article to be discussed is the workers hit the hardest. The context of the article is that pandemic has costed more to women and salaried workers in terms of job losses than any other sector. The Center for Monitoring Indian Economy conducted a consumer pyramids household survey and revealed job losses during last 2 years. The last the lost and recovery data, which last 2 years have witnessed into pandemic, saw a net decline of 1.7 percentage or 7 million job losses in 2021-22, short of pre-pandemic levels. Considering the normal decline in employment as 0.31 percentage per annum, the net job loss 4.5 million. The article goes on discussing the plight of daily wage workers, small vendors, and rising entrepreneurs. They have an advantage. They can go back to work once pandemic has set down. When normal life resumed, most of the 79 million jobs lost in this way got reversed or recovered. The women lost jobs almost permanently. Women account for 11% of all jobs before the pandemic levels. They accounted for 52% of the 7 million job losses due to pandemic. In cities, these figures are 9% and 76% respectively. The labor participation of women have fallen drastically. The women in informal sector have lost jobs permanently. In the observation made, this is the observation made by CMIE. Similar case is there with salaried employees. The loss of jobs of salaried employees is almost permanent. They cannot go back to the job they lost. The biggest challenge the employment arena faces now in India is employing the women and the salaried employees for whom the pandemic became the curtain to their career goals.